Okay everybody, here's your warning. The following video is rated M for mature audiences. If you're not one of the mature audiences, please click off. This video may also contain awesome content with cringe jokes and naughty no-no words, so please watch at your own discretion. Video games have been evolving constantly in the past years, establishing themselves as a hobby that all age groups can partake in and allowing many genres to flourish, among them survival horror. In the early 2000s, many games in the genre starting to stand out and solidify themselves as a recognized franchise, such as Resident Evil, Silent Hill, Fatal Frame, and Dead Rising, to name a few. Sadly, some games aren't as lucky, and the proof of that is the case of Haunting Ground. It came out in the year 2005, being received poorly at first for coming out in the same year as Resident Evil 4. Yes, it's that same game that everyone and their mom used to play to death on literally every device known to man until the remake came out. Like seriously guys, what the hell is even a Zeebo? Have you ever heard of a Zeebo? Because I've never heard of a Zeebo. Anyways, being unfairly compared to it for being from the same company and the same genre, it quickly became a title that would be destined to be left and forgotten for eons to come. However, over the years it slowly started being observed through a more analytical lens, and the community started warming up to it, to the point that many consider it a classic gem trapped in the PS2 generation of games. Haunting Ground is a very special case for a video game, as it incorporates many ideas from different games as a base and it makes them work. Most apparent in the gameplay is where it adopts the Resident Evil third-person view, but instead of tank controls, it uses a regular 3-dimensional movement type, and the inclusion of hiding mechanics like the ones that you see in the Clock Tower series. Even though this game became one that is very well liked by the survival horror community, I feel that it's barely talked about or even acknowledged as much as it deserves. So, seeing how I have a microphone and the god-given right to shove my favorite spooky game up in everyone's faces, I'm here to remedy that for my own satisfaction with a small introduction to the game. Before I begin though, I want to make clear that I'll try to make this as spoiler-free as possible, because this game is a great title that I encourage everyone to try for themselves. This is a journey that is best experienced blind, and if this video manages to plant that seed in your heads, then I'll sleep well tonight knowing that I did the Lord's work. So for those of you who don't know what a Haunting Ground even is, it's a game in which you take control of Jill Valentine from Resident Evil 5. Wait a minute. It's a game where you take control of the protagonist, Fiona Belly, a young college student with a bright future ahead of her and a body with the constitution of a Pringle that can be knocked over by the slightest summer breeze. One fateful night, Fiona and her parents are the victims of a car crash in which only Fiona survives. As she passes out, she notices the silhouette of a man outside of the car, only to find herself waking up in an unknown place moments later. After wandering around, she finds out that she's trapped in a castle with the residents who, for one reason or another, wish to get their grubby mitts on her for their own nefarious needs. Shortly after becoming aware of the danger she is in, Fiona meets her new best friend, the handsomest of boys, the goodest of boys, the fluffiest of boys, easily the most powerful anime character of all time, Huey. Together, they must find a way to escape the castle while avoiding the stalkers and unravel the mystery of why Fiona was taken there and by whom. Haunting Ground, also known as Demento, is very unique when it comes to the way it presents itself. It's a psychological survival horror game that likes to use the environment and imagery to immerse you into the world and force you to put yourself in Fiona's shoes, giving you that feeling of utter helplessness that we all know and love in horror. In not so many words, this game is freaking gorgeous. Every area of the game is carefully crafted in a way that it keeps the environment fresh and new as you progress, but it still retains its creepy and oppressive aesthetic to keep you grounded and also to not distract you from what's happening around you. Also, every single foe that you encounter tackles a theme for which they wish to catch and harm Fiona.
Blood, flesh, woman, you vile creature. You lure the man into your filthy body again and again, and you are allowed to do it because you are a precious, precious little princess. Precious little
also a huge disclaimer. The themes that are used to achieve this can be pretty heavy for certain audiences. A few examples of these are physical abuse and the attempts of murder of the protagonist, the belittlement of her individuality and sense of self, the implied cannibalism of her, and the extremely subtle but not subtle hinting to incestual forced pregnancy, to name a few. So basically, they really put Fiona through the ringer in this one. While the game does not hold its punches with a portrayal of these events, it manages to utilize them in a very tasteful way. By this I mean that it doesn't portray them in a gratuitous way or just as a means to gain shock value for the sake of being disturbing to the player, but rather they slowly hint to them and give you context clues to each of the Stalker's motivations and designs for Fiona through the use of the in-game files you can find laying around, as well as contributing to setting the tone of the harsh reality that she is in, allowing the player to piece these things together as they go along. It is built to play around with your feelings, but also to get you thinking about the events and make you establish a bit of an empathetic bond with the protagonist. While the world building and story of this game are pretty good for a title of its time, Haunting Ground was quite innovative and experimental in many other ways. First we have the core gameplay, which is exploration and puzzle solving. And by the way, these puzzles can really make you rack your brain the first time you play. Some require you to read certain files carefully, while others ask you to deduce a certain order or pattern, and a few others are just... they're kinda given to you. Anyways, you go around and progress through the rooms of the castle by grabbing key items and learning the layout, all while avoiding your stalkers. During the tutorial phase, you are taught and encouraged to make a run for it and hide whenever a stalker is close, and that's mostly what you will be doing for the rest of the game. But, for those of you who aren't total weenies, the game makes it a point to also teach you about the combat system, in which both Fiona and Huey can fend for themselves if the need arises, and that in certain cases it's more viable to fight back using certain traps and gadgets that you will find around in the castle in order to escape, or you can do it like a real gamer and just unload your unbridled rage.
That's my purse! I don't know you!
That being said, you can't just pretend you're Rambo and go on the prowl to counterattack every single time. No, you have to remember that Fiona is a frail little Barbie doll, so her physical strength might be akin to that of a wet towel, and while she can damage her pursuers, it'll barely make a dent on them at first. Also, she will progressively deplete an invisible resource called stamina the more effort she goes through. Speaking of stamina, this game has two separate resources that you need to keep tabs on at all times. One of them is the stamina, as I previously mentioned, and the other is the panic meter. The way these two work is very simple. The more physical stress Fiona is in, the more the stamina meter will deplete. This includes running, getting hit by the enemy, running, dodging attacks, running, attack with your powerful legs like your Chun-Li, and running. Seriously, you run a lot in this game. The way you'll know that she's exhausted is through small changes in her animations, and she will become much slower and sluggish to use. As for the panic meter, this will fill the more emotional stress is put on Fiona, and the way this works is through whatever is happening around her. This includes certain cutscenes and special interactions with your environment, as well as being around a stalker for too long, which is actually the biggest factor in play. The way you'll know Fiona is terrified is through the screen itself. As panic rises, her vision becomes blurry and distorted, something that the game conveys to the player in the form of a screen filter. At first, Fiona will keep herself in check as she starts to get scared and tries to run away from the bad guys, but if your attempts keep failing, she will start falling into despair. This will prompt her to start moving erratically around the room and tripping over from time to time, making it easier for the stalker to catch up to you. Lastly, once the meter depletes entirely, that's when the most dangerous mechanic rears its ugly head. Panic mode. Okay, seriously, this is off script, but I just have to say it. Panic mode fucking sucks. It's the worst thing that can happen to you. It is very uncomfortable to be okay 1 second and then just go zooming around the room just like you have no care in the world, all because just some spooky lady came over to you from behind and you weren't prepared. It sucks. It's awful. You can cheat it, but it's still awful. Anyway, let me just explain this mechanic so we can get it over with. So this is how panic mode is gonna go down, kiddos. Panic mode is the moment where she loses it entirely. Fiona becomes very difficult to control as she darts directly in front of her, smashing against every single thing that she can see while tripping almost every step, only to try to crawl away, making her extremely vulnerable to a one-hit kill. You have to play very smart if you ever end up in a situation where you have no way out and you enter panic mode. On the plus side, panic mode only lasts for a few seconds, so if you manage to keep yourself safe, Fiona will regain her composure and control normally once more. You can also call Huey for help during that mode, and if he's able, he'll try to buy time for panic mode to finish. Now, this is all well and good, but you might be thinking, what about Huey? What's he good for? Don't worry, he's about to get his own spotlight in a moment. Throughout the game, you will control Fiona as a playable character, but alongside her you will have the dog Huey, who will stop at nothing to protect Fiona from her ruthless attackers. Like with Fiona, he comes with his own set of mechanics and intricacies, but I will simplify it as much as I'm able to. Something to note is that it is imperative that you master both characters as you advance, because surviving is a team effort and cooperation is the word of the day. So the way Huey works is as follows. He is an autonomous NPC that will remain close to you at all times as you explore the castle. The way he will help you will be through the use of commands that you can give to him to make him complete certain tasks. These commands will change depending on the situation, such as whether you're exploring or in the middle of combat. While in exploration mode, you can command Huey to search and fetch for items to give you, stay in one spot, or even follow you. But when you're fighting, you can instead command him to attack your pursuer and keep them distracted long enough for you to make your escape while Huey makes his way back to you. Huey really sounds like the full package, right? Well, I'm about to piss on your parade. You see, one of the innovations in this game is its use of AI in order to tailor an experience that fits your gameplay. This means that the game is learning from you, be it from your favorite hiding spots to your preferred tactics when it comes to battle, making the stalkers gain an advantage if you rely on the same strategies all the time. This also applies to how obedient Huey is, unfortunately. Sometimes, usually when you need him most, the dog will ignore or outright refuse your commands and opt to do something else or nothing at all. This is usually more common in the early game as you two barely know each other. This can be remedied by issuing the scold and praise commands. These particular commands will alert Huey that he is not doing what you're ordering him to do, and he'll behave in the way you want him to next time you issue the command. Basically, feel free to let him know when he's being a really good boy and when he's being a really bad boy, and you'll be Gucci. This is important because if you use these two commands responsibly, you will have an easier time down the line as the game learns to not ignore you as much. But there are still other things that can influence the outcome of this, and I'm about to get into it. As I mentioned previously, Huey is an autonomous NPC with his own mechanics. These mechanics include a stamina meter and an affection meter. Both of them are also invisible. The stamina works similarly to Fiona's, except that his depletes more noticeably through fighting, so word to the wise. Please don't let Huey get hit too much. He can take in a lot of punishment, but if you take it too far, he will die. Okay, maybe not die, but he will be incapacitated for a long while, and you will be left alone to fend for yourself, and we already went into why that's a bad idea. His other mechanic, the affection meter, is something that will influence many important things in the game, one of which is the commands. As you advance in your journey, you can bond with Huey through playing with him, feeding him treats, and praising him whenever he finds an item or successfully defends you from an attacker. If you treat him right, he will become more obedient and cooperative when you're in a tight spot. But if you mistreat him, then you're an awful person and God hates you! Also, this will make him prone to ignoring you, attacking you randomly, and leaving you to get fucked while he tries to keep himself alive. In short, if you don't want a bun in the oven, then take care of your dog. Now that I covered the good guys, the bad guys are going to be much simpler to explain. There are various different stalkers in the game, I'm not gonna get too into them because, like I said, I don't want to go into spoiler territory, but as the name implies, they will go around the castle looking for you and try to catch you when they spot you. They all have their own unique thing, and each one is more intelligent than the last, so you will always have to be on your toes. Sometimes certain stalkers can feel oppressive when dealing with them, but there are some tips you should know and always keep in your mind to make your trip a bit easier. Always be moving. That's the first rule. Staying in a room for too long will always raise the chances of a stalker catching you off guard and forcing you to rethink your strategies or outright killing you. The second tip I can give you is to never hide in the same spot twice in a row. Like I mentioned already, they pay attention to you. If you keep giving them the slip using the same methods, they will eventually catch on to you, so always rotate your spots. And this one actually leads me to my last tip, which is pay close attention. In this game, whatever applies to you, it applies to them. If they can memorize your tactics, you can also learn their quirks and work around them. Seriously, it's super important to always learn about your current enemy's behavior so you can exploit their weaknesses and have an easier time. One of the best things this game has to offer is its replay value. While the story can be pretty linear, that doesn't stop it from having little special bits and pieces that can change with each playthrough, most noticeably being the cutscenes. Depending on certain actions you take, some cutscenes will play out differently and affect that bit of story. Moreover, the game also features different endings, and these have very specific conditions you need to fulfill in order to get them. These endings award you special extras at the end as well, so you are encouraged to look around and find each and every secret, as some are pretty obvious once you glance over them, and others are more obscure and silly. This is a serious game, I promise. One of these extras are the costumes, and these are obviously optional, and they can range from being very silly to, Other special extras in the game are the inclusion of a hard mode in which stalkers are way tougher, and if Huey gets knocked out, he will actually die for realsies, so don't be a hero. Another is the special mode, Dog's Best Friend. When you finish the game once, you will unlock a secret room, where you'll be able to access this game mode. Unlike regular gameplay, in this mode you control Huey instead of Fiona, and the goal is to guide Fiona to safety from one point of the level to the other as fast as you can. However, this game mode is a nightmare as Fiona's AI is incredibly stupid at best, and she will always backtrack into danger or wander around aimlessly or stand around practicing her white privilege as the baddie zooms into her position. Honey, sweetie, please move! Anyways, I think this is all I will say about this topic. I could seriously keep going on about this game, but I kinda wanna keep this video on a bit of a basic level so it can serve as a tiny introduction to the people who are new to this title. My love and appreciation of this game runs very deep, and I can bet the developers also love their project very much considering the amount of detail and polish they made to it considering the PS2's hardware limitations. Even now, the game looks so much more beautiful than many other games of its generation, and considering the amount of content it's packing, you bet that they wanted to make this something that would be really worth your money. It's a shame that it had to go under everyone's radar like it did. It became pretty much an unsung hero of survival horror games. And hey, if you're able to add this game to your collection, I highly suggest you do. Copies nowadays sell for quite a lot of money online, but if you somehow get lucky to get your hands on it, then great. And if not, well, you always have other means to play it.